If you've been in an office for more than 5 minutes, chances are you've already made a mistake. You probably don't know it yet, but you have. And I don't say that to scare you. I say it because sometimes it's the most normal thing in the world. The part that messes people up isn't the mistake, it's what they think the mistake means. School trains you to believe mistakes are a grade, a score, a ranking. Practice doesn't work like that. In practice, mistakes are more like weather. They show up, you deal with them, you adjust, and then you keep moving. But here's the catch. Not all these mistakes are equal. Some get corrected with a calm email and a markup. There's no drama, no story, and then nobody even remembers it a week later. But others change how people trust you. And that difference is not always about how big the mistake was. It's about how you handled it. It's about whether you surfaced it or maybe you hid it. It's about whether it became a pattern. And that's what this episode is. Not dramatic mistakes, not career-ending mistakes, just the normal ones. Why some disappear in red line dust and why others stick. And why the fear of being wrong slows more careers than being wrong ever will. Because a lot of people don't get stuck because they make the mistakes. They get stuck because they get cautious. They get quiet and slow. And then they stop taking clean swings at things. They start living in a loop of, I'll just check one more thing. And that feels responsible and it feels safe. But in practice, that kind of fear creates a different risk. Silence, delay, ambiguity, missed timing, work that stops moving. And that's the mistake nobody talks about. You're listening to The Practice of Practice, a podcast for architects, designers, and emerging professionals navigating the gap between school and real work. We focus on the realities most people only learn through experience: workflow, judgment, responsibility, and time. It's not theory, it's practice. All right, let's get into it. In episode 1, we talked about confusion and how most early career confusion is structural, not personal. In episode 2, we talked about silence and how silence is sometimes the training. This episode connects those two ideas to something you'll actually deal with every single week, if not every day: mistakes. Here's the reframe I want you to hold for this whole episode. Practice is not a test. Practice is a risk system. And it sounds harsh. It's not meant to be harsh. It's just true. A project is a chain of decisions, and each decision carries risk. There's money risk, schedule risk, safety risk, reputation risk, and then sometimes there's legal risk. So when people look at your work, they're not asking, did you get an A? They're asking, is this safe to build from? And safe has a few other ingredients. Is it clear? Is it consistent? Is it coordinated? Is it on time? Is it honest about what it does not know yet? And the last one matters more than people think, because everyone expects mistakes. Everyone does. What people do not tolerate is uncertainty that pretends to be certainty, or problems that get discovered late because someone stayed quiet. So if you're early in your career and you feel like every mistake is a threat, I need you to take a breath. You're not behind because you made a mistake. You're behind when you don't learn from it, or when you hide from it, or when you repeat it without adjusting. And a lot of that can be fixed fast with better habits and a more calm response. One line I need you to keep in your heads today is this: correctability beats flawless. Flawless is a fantasy anyway. Correctable is a professional skill. So here's why mistakes feel worse than they are. Mistakes in school were public, even when they were more private. You pin up, you present, you get a crit, you get a review, you get judged. And a lot of time, the feedback is framed like a personal evaluation, even when it's not meant to be. So you start linking that error to identity. If I mess that up, I'm not good. If I mess that up, I'm falling behind. If I ask a question, I'm exposing a weakness. And that mindset doesn't die the day you get hired. It follows you right into practice. And now, instead of a professor, it's a project manager, or a principal, or a consultant, or even a client. And now the stakes feel higher because the work is real. So you start treating mistakes like they're dangerous. You start treating being wrong like it's trust-ending event. And that's where the people overcorrect. They triple check everything except the one thing they should have done. They should have flagged the uncertainty early. They should have said, I'm not sure about this assumption. They should have asked the one question that would have saved 3 days. They should have put the issue on the table when it was still small. But instead, they hide the work. They grind. They try to work out uncertainty. They try to outwork uncertainty. And you cannot outwork uncertainty. You can only clarify it. And this is where episode 2 matters. Silence is sometimes the training, but silence can also be avoidance. And if you let fear make you quiet, you end up being trained by your own hesitation. That's a brutal teacher, and it bills by the hour. Let's give some structure without turning it into a lecture. There are 4 broad categories of mistakes you'll see in practice. I'm not saying these are official. Nobody stamps these on your forehead, but they are real. And once you see them, you stop panicking as much because you can tell what kind of situation you're in. Category 1, production mistakes. These are the low stakes, everyday ones. The wrong tag, a typo, a keynote off, a leader that points to the wrong thing, a detail call out that should have been A5.2 and you wrote A5.3. They're annoying, but they're not catastrophic. Those get corrected with a markup. Category 2 are coordination mistakes. These are the ones where your work bumps into somebody else's work. The architectural background is outdated and the civil plan's now wrong. You shifted a wall and the mechanical duct is still running right through it. You changed the door swing and now the egress path is different. You issued an updated plan, but a consultant's still using the old link. These mistakes create ripples. They take time to unwind. Category 3 is judgment mistakes. These are the ones that expose how you think. A wrong assumption about code, a wrong assumption about existing conditions, a wrong priority, and wrong level of completeness for the phase, which turns into wrong interpretation of what the client actually needed. These aren't always bigger mistakes on paper, but they carry a different weight. Because leaders are not just fixing a line, they're assessing your decision making. Category 4 is trust mistakes. Those are the ones that make people pull the work back, hiding an issue, going quiet, blaming somebody else, repeating the same mistake without adjusting, acting like it's not a big deal when clearly it is. These are not about intelligence, they're about reliability. And reliability is the currency in practice. Talent gets you noticed, but trust gets you work. So when you're thinking about mistakes, don't just ask, how bad is this? Ask, what category is this? Because then your response should match the category. That's how you stay calm. That's how you learn quickly. And that's how you stop treating every red line like a personality test. Let's talk about a production mistake. It's a simple one. You issued a sheet set for an internal review. The PM marks it up. There's a note bubble around a door tag. They write, hey, the tag should be 105B, not 105A. That's it. This is not a trust crisis. This is not a meeting. This is normal. The correct response is not panic or a 10-second apology. The correct response is just to fix it and make it easy to see that you fixed it. Update the sheet, cloud the revision if that's your standard, save it in the right place, and then send a short message, something like, updated sheets uploaded, door tag was corrected. And that's a clean loop. And if you want to level up, you ask yourself, why did that happen? Was it because I was rushing? Was it because I just copied an old or another tag? Is it because your model labels are messy? Whatever it is, the learning is small, but it compounds. And that's the theme today. Small corrections repeated become judgment. Judgment becomes trust. Old school offices understood this. They redlined everything all the time. It was not personal, but it's how work got made. And the goal is not to avoid production mistakes forever. The goal is to keep them small, correct them fast, and not repeat the same ones endlessly. A coordination mistake. These are the ones that waste time. Because coordination mistakes do not just affect you, they affect other people, and that's why they feel a bit heavier. Here's a common one. You adjust a wall layout, you clean up a classroom plan, you shift the wall, you shift a partition, you move a door. It makes the space better. It solves a functional issue. You feel good about it. You should, but you don't flag it. You don't tell anybody it impacts the mechanical layout. The engineer is still designing ductwork off the old plan. A week later, the conflict shows up, and now someone has to spend an hour in a meeting that shouldn't exist. Now the engineer is annoyed, not because you changed the wall, but because you changed the wall and didn't hand it off. That's the difference. Coordination mistakes are often just handoff mistakes. So the fix is not just coordinate better in some vague way. The fix is to build a habit that says, when I change something that affects others, I flag it. Even a short note. FYI, we shifted the corridor wall on grid B. The door moved about 18 inches, which impacts the ceiling layout and duct routing. Done. That's not over communicating. That's basic practice hygiene. If you want to move fast in an office, you have to protect that chain, because the chain is how projects survive. And if you think, I don't want to bother them, I want you to hear me. You're bothering them more by staying quiet. Silence is sometimes the training, but silence is often sometimes the source of the problem. Now we can get into the category that scares people the most: judgment mistakes. These are the ones where you can feel a room change a little bit, not because someone is mad, but because someone is recalibrating. Here's an example. You assume something about code. Maybe it's an occupancy classification. Maybe it's a travel distance assumption. Maybe it's a fire barrier requirement. Maybe you just assumed an existing wall was rated because it looked like it, and you designed based on that assumption. Then someone reviews it and says, where'd this come from? And now you realize you don't really have a hard answer. It's not the end of your career, but it is a moment. And this is the part nobody really teaches clearly. In school, you can improvise a rationale, and sometimes it passes. Fake it till you make it, right? In practice, improvised certainty is dangerous. So the better move is not to pretend. The better move is to name the assumption early. Here's what that can sound like, and I'll keep it simple. I'm assuming this wall is rated. I didn't verify it yet. I can confirm existing conditions, or we can treat it as unrated and design accordingly. Now that sentence does three things. It surfaces the risk. It makes your thinking visible. It offers a path forward, which is what leaders want. They don't need you to be the right person all the time. They need you to be honest about what's known versus assumed, because that honesty lets them manage the risk. And that's what practice is. Risk management disguised as drawings. And now we talk about the part that actually changes outcomes. Your response. Here's a simple sequence. You can use it for almost anything. Step 1, surface it fast. Not after lunch tomorrow, not after you clean it up. Now. If you caught it, that's already a win. Say it. Step 2, state the impact calmly. Where does it show up? What does it affect? Who else it affects? Step 3, offer the correction path. What are you going to do? By when? Step 4, own it without theatrics. No self-destruction, no guilt spiral, just ownership. Step 5, close the loop. Confirm it's corrected, and don't leave people guessing. Step 6, prevent the repeat. One sentence, one adjustment. That's how you turn mistakes into progress. I'll give you a couple lines that work. Words matter. Flagging this now while it's still easy to fix. Or, I caught a conflict. It impacts sheet A200 and A613. I'm revising now and I'll issue by 3 o'clock today. My assumption was wrong. I corrected and updated the updated sheet. I'm not fully confident in this condition. Here's 2 options. I recommend option 1 for now, pending field verification. Those are what competence sound like in practice. They're not flawless, but competence is clear, timely, and correctable. And notice what's missing. There is no begging. There's no performance. There's no, I'm sorry, I'm the worst. You're not doing a confession. You're doing professional risk management. That's the job. Here's the hardest truth for people early on. Leaders don't fear your mistakes. They fear your silence because the silence hides the risk. In hidden risk, that gets expensive. Now we have to talk about the highest stakes category, which are trust mistakes. This is where your career will slow down quietly. Not because someone is vindictive, because people protect the work. If a leader thinks they need to check everything you do, they will. If they think they can't rely on you or your updates, they'll stop giving you that important work. It's not as a punishment, but it's as protection. So what causes that? Well, it's usually one of three things. It's either hiding. You notice a problem, but you think, oh, I'll fix that before anyone sees. Sometimes you can, yeah, but often you can't. And now you're late. Now the issue's grown. Now someone else got surprised. Surprises are what break trust. Next is blame. You throw the consultant under the bus, or you throw the contractor under the bus, or you even throw another teammate under the bus. And even if maybe you're technically right, it reads as unsafe. Because if you do that in a small moment, people are going to start to wonder what you do in the bigger moments. 3 is repeating mistakes without adjustment. Everyone repeats mistakes at first. That's normal. The trust problem happens when the same miss repeats and there's no new habit, no new check, no new change in approach. That signals one thing, not that you're dumb, that you're not paying attention. And in practice, paying attention is half the job. Here's the simplest way to protect trust. When you make a mistake, don't just fix it. Change something so it's less likely to happen again. It can be tiny. It could be a little checklist item. It could be a saved email phrase or just a note to yourself. But it's a new step in your routine, and that's how leaders know that you're calibrating. And calibration is what they're really looking for. Now we circle back to the line from episode 2. The fear of being wrong slows more careers than being wrong ever will. And let's be direct about what that looks like. It looks like you wait too long to ask a question. It looks like you spend 4 hours polishing something that needed a 2-minute clarification. It looks like you stay quiet in a meeting even though you see the issue. It looks like you don't send the email because you're not ready. And the trap is that all of that feels responsible. It feels like you're being careful. But careful is not the same as clear. In practice, clarity is the real safety. If you are uncertain, the professional move is not to hide it until it disappears. The professional move is to name it early while it's cheap. That's why the best people in an office are not the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who surface the things early. They keep the chain moving. They protect timing. They make it easy for others to respond. They create fewer surprises. And that's what trust is built on. Now, this is the part that stings a little. If you're always trying to avoid looking wrong, you'll also avoid learning. Because learning is being wrong repeatedly in smaller and smaller ways. That's how the judgment forms. Judgment's not a personality trait. It's built from reps, and mistakes are reps, whether you like it or not. I want to give you a tool that sounds too simple to matter, but it matters. If you want to improve quickly, you need a way to keep track of what you learn, good and bad, because practice teaches you every week, and then you forget it the moment you need it. You'll get a markup that teaches you something. You'll have a meeting where someone says one sentence that changes how you see a process. You'll catch a mistake and realize why it happened. You'll get burned by a handoff and realize what you should have said. And if you don't capture these lessons, you'll end up relearning the same thing 5 times. And that's just exhausting. Pick a system, any system, but make it real. Whether it's a small notebook or a OneNote tab, even sticky notes if that's how your brain works. But here's the rule. It has to end up in one place, not 10 places, not your brain, one place. And it has to be short. This is not journaling. This is a field log. I use a field notes book for mine, just interjecting. Here's a simple format that works. You add the date, the project, whether it's the name or the number, whatever you use. You add what happened, what I missed or what worked, how it got corrected, what I'm going to do next time. That's it. And if you want to make it even more useful, add one more line. A phrase to use next time. Because a lot of mistakes are communication mistakes. So you capture the line that would have helped. Flagging this now while it's easy to fix. Or I'm not confident in this assumption yet. Here are two options. I recommend option one. The next time you're stressed, you're not inventing language under pressure. You're borrowing it from your own experience. And that's the point. As you grow, you're building a personal reference library of judgment. Old school architects did this their own way. Margins, notes, red pencil habits, a mental catalog built over decades. This is just the same idea, but it's just faster. And if you do it consistently, it changes everything. Because you stop feeling like you're guessing. You start feeling like you're accumulating. And accumulation is what practice is. All right, we'll pull the thread tight here. Some mistakes get corrected with a calm email and a markup. Some mistakes change how people trust you. The difference isn't usually intelligence. It's response. It's timing. It's whether you surfaced it. It's whether you owned it. It's whether you adjusted so it didn't repeat. And the fear of being wrong, that fear creates silence. It creates delay. It makes you avoid ownership. It makes you overwork. And it makes you smaller than you need to be. Being wrong is going to happen either way. The question is whether you make it correctable, whether you turn it into calibration, and whether you keep the work moving forward. That's what the office is watching for. Not perfection, reliability, clarity, judgment in progress. Closing thought here. If episode 1 was about realizing confusion is structural and not personal, and episode 2 was realizing silence is sometimes the training, then episode 3 is about realizing mistakes are part of the training. The normal ones, of course. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about judgment. I've talked about it in 3 episodes because judgment is a thing everyone seems to have, but nobody can explain. This is what determines what gets trusted, what gets reviewed, what gets questioned, and what gets handed to you without supervision. Most people think judgment is something you either have or you don't. In practice, it's built quietly and repeatedly, and usually through moments exactly like the ones we've talked about today. The practice of architecture is not intuitive, but it is learnable. So don't worry, we'll keep building from here.